Welcome, good morning. We are starting a new series today. This is going into a new year, and our second vote was for a study of John 13 through 17. So, here's the little image that I made that goes with our online, and you'll see it if you're on Facebook and the rest of it. Famous last words, life lessons from Jesus' last teachings in John 13 through 17. And our first sermon this week is going to be Do As I Do and As I Say from John 13, chapter 13, the first 17 verses. And there's the date that we'll be publishing this, that it'll get ready. So thank you for being with us. We look forward to going through this series together. It's a section of Scripture that I find impactful, particularly impactful. Why this section? Well, because last words can be significant. The final words of somebody, after they know that their end is coming and they've thought about the things that they want to convey and portray, those last words can be significant. This is also a unique section of John. We'll talk about that. These are Jesus' last words to the 11. That is at chapter 13, verse 30. Judas leaves. So it's to the 11 apostles, the disciples that are gathered with him, before his arrest in chapter 18. So from John chapter 13 through 17 is a unique section, and it's an impactful section. Our last words can be important, they can be significant, and somehow some people have recorded some of these. And here's a few famous last words of people that you may recognize their names and their influence. So the first one that I have is supposed to be the last words of Da Vinci, Leonardo da Vinci. And his last words, he said, is, "I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have." There he is, facing his deathbed, and he thinks that he could have done better. He ends his life seeing his failures and not his victories. All the amazing things that he learned and his advancements in science and art and all the rest of it, he looks at his life and he says, "I've offended God and mankind." A couple others here. Nostradamus, who was known for making predictions, he gave his last words were supposed to be, "Tomorrow I shall no longer be here." He made predictions about the future, but he didn't have a personal certainty about what awaited for him after. He just knew this is likely my last day, and that's the thing that he focused on. A little maybe gallows humor, that's Marie Antoinette. She said as she approached the guillotine, she was convicted of treason, she was about to be beheaded, and maybe she saw her regrets, or maybe it was just some gallows humor. Either way, the line that's attributed to her is, "Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose." Well, but it was time to face the consequence. And at the end of life, that's what we also know, is that there's no more time to repair regrets, to fix things, to make adjustments, because at the end is the end. So it leads me to the question, what words of wisdom or last message would you like to leave? We are all living a legacy and leaving a legacy. So what is that legacy for you? What are the words that you would want attributed to you? What's the main message that you want to leave behind? Jesus knows his time is coming. That's a main part of the passage. He knows his time is coming, and the last things, his last opportunity, his last evening to be with them before the arrest and the crucifixion, he wants to portray some teachings, and those teachings are of significance. I have three different intents, three connected reasons for doing this, ways that we can analyze and consider if we're getting where we need to be with it. The main intent is to have us understand the text within its context, to see how those timeless truths apply to our lives today. To not just look at it historically, a moment in the upper room, but to see what those truths are that will convey to us. That's why I've called it life lessons. A second intent is to encourage us to share those life lessons with others, encourage them to know and follow Jesus. That we would connect to people, we would encourage them with the same life lessons. Here's some good teachings that have benefited our lives, therefore they could be helpful to others. Whether they're our own children or grandchildren or friends or family, co-workers, whatever it is, to share those life lessons. And a third reason to do this, or a way to evaluate it, is that we would improve in our Bible study skills as we learn to read in context and as we get the benefit of being in the section. To connect to today's sermon is to connect to the reason behind it. And so I thought, well, a part of it is that frustration, the do as I do, not as I say part frustration. How frustrated do you get when people of influence tell you to do things that they won't do? They just are not going to do it. But they want you to do something. They set a standard that they're not reaching, but they want you to do it. Like a boss who won't take on any menial task and hides away in their office while everybody else does the grunt work. That doesn't sit well for most of us. Or how about when you're given a standard of effort or action or ethics that aren't being shown by those in leadership? Here's what you are to do, and here's even the consequence for doing or not doing what I'm asking you to do or prohibiting you to do. But it doesn't take long before you find out that they're not doing the same things that they're asking you to do. They're not living to that standard. That can be frustrating. Saying one thing and doing another is frustrating to those who follow. As we know from experience and our own personal connection and our study of James 3:17, hypocritical actors are not living a wise life. When you are not honest, sincere, it's a bother. We expect people to lead by example, and good leaders lead by example, not just in their words, in their behavior as well. I titled the next little bit, Getting Personal. We know that we should lead by good example, but we also know our own faults and our failings. As a parent, it's difficult to teach important life lessons because we don't always follow the truth of our own teaching. For example, we may say, "You always tell the truth," and then our children catch us in a lie. Then what do? Conflicting examples are confusing. Actions speak louder than words alone, and we know that when we look at leadership who sets a conflicting example. Because we know our shortcomings, our sinfulness, our selfishness, we may end up finding it easier and less conflicting to teach with a do as I say, not as I do lifestyle. To be able to say, here's the standard even though I'm not reaching it. That can be done with a grace and mercy approach, but it's a standard for you and it's not a standard for me. That's not the way it goes. It's a standard for all of us, and I'm trying to achieve it as well. In today's section, Jesus is trying to teach those who aren't ready to listen, and his message is that they are to do as he does, and they are to do as he says. People should be able to trust our words and our actions. Those should go together. What we do and what we say complement one another. So, that's the life lesson that we're going to go through today in the first section of chapter 13. This passage is impactful because, one, it's unique. It's only in John, and other than the prediction of Peter's denial, which is in chapter 13, 37, and 38, all of the rest of this from John chapter 13 through 17, all of it is unique to the Gospel of John. John 13 through 17 tells us what's on Jesus' mind and his heart as his time drew near to be crucified. He knows that his end is almost there. That's why these are his last words. It's his last teaching section to them. The section speaks of which truths he most wanted them to know before his death and the things that he wanted them to go back to and remember after his death. So there's the major teaching themes that are within this section. Powerful to me. And hopefully we'll be able to gather those lessons and apply them ourselves. So let's get into the text. We're not going to get far before we start to notice some things. Just here in verse 1, it was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that his time had come for him to leave the world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. This is the third and the final Passover in John, which is why we know it was a 3-year ministry of Jesus. It's the longest section about the upper room, but we don't have the specifics of the Last Supper or even the Lord's Supper recorded. We don't have that in here. We know right away that Jesus knows that his time has come. He has the end in mind as he teaches all the way through the section. He knows what kind of an end is coming as well. He knows that the end will lead him back to the Father. His motivation for the section, as it says here, is in love. John speaks of agape love many times in this section. More so in this section than in the previous. In the first 12 chapters, he only uses the word 6 times, agape love, that self-sacrificing love. But in these few chapters, he uses it 31 times, according to the NIV text note. Just before the Passover, he knows that his time has come. He knows where he's going. He's loved them, but now he wants them to see the full extent of his love. So, the verses continue. It says, the evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he... And too often we might jump ahead and see what he did, but look at the motivation for why he's about to do what he's about to do. Jesus knows that there's a spiritual battle and how it has impacted his apostles, beginning with Judas. He knows Judas is going to betray, that it's very close, it's much at hand. Jesus also knows the bigger spiritual truth about his relationship and responsibility to the Father. He also knew that he had come from the Father, that he was returning to the Father, that is almost nearly finished too. He knew the truths even if the apostles did not. The combination of these truths leads Jesus to interrupting the meal, starting his teaching, but he starts it with a action instead of okay, everybody pay attention. He doesn't call attention verbally, he calls attention in his behavior. Because he knows these truths, what does he do? Action-oriented. An action-oriented teaching. Because of these truths, he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin. He began washing his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Jesus starts this teaching section in action instead of words. And that order of events is usually helpful when we're teaching people today. People do not often care how much you know until they know how much you care. Jesus doesn't just interrupt the conversation verbally to say, hey, I've got something to tell you. He gets up, shows in action. He starts taking off his outer clothes. He gets a towel. And all of a sudden, maybe people in the audience, the people that are around the table, start to quiet their conversation and pay attention to what's going on. And that leads to an investment about what he's doing. That behavior of washing the feet leads to a discussion that's started by Peter. Peter sees what's happening and he tries to interpret not only what's happening, but why it's happening. So in verse 6, Jesus has just done a very menial, lowest class, lowest, most serving thing that he can do, and doesn't draw big attention to it. In verse 6, it says, he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus replied, you do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. That should have led Peter to listening instead of speaking. But it doesn't. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. So now Peter thinks that he understands, so he goes all in. In verse 9 he says, then Lord, Simon Peter replied, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. So Peter thinks I got the point. They're just committed to you a little bit. I want to be committed to you completely. Just wash me all over. Instead of asking Jesus, what are you trying to teach me? No, he misses that opportunity because he just keeps speaking. Verse 10. So Jesus uses this transition to his second topic. Now that they're listening, now that they're paying attention, he starts to speak about what's really important. Jesus answered, a person who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you. For he knew who was going to betray him, and that's why he said not everyone was clean. We know already that Judas, but next week we're going to talk about how they all really betray including somebody that likes to listen to a rooster or doesn't like to listen to it. Verse 12, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. Remember, he asked them. He's starting with the question. So let's take a look at this. That in verse 11, the statement goes right over their heads because they're not ready to hear this. And we do well to understand that listening to the Holy Spirit is as much of a gift as speaking God's word. Not everyone is ready to hear the truth that we're sharing, but we be patient and we keep on serving. For he knew who was going to betray him, and that's why he said not everyone was clean. And they don't even bring that part up. They just skip right over it. After verse 12, do you wonder what the faces in the room looked like as they look at each other? Some would stick to the obvious. Do you understand what I've done for you? Yeah, you washed our feet. Got it. Others may think that they learned the bigger lesson to not eat with dirty feet. Oh yeah, we should have taken care of that. That's not polite. Some others may have caught on the need to serve, but I don't think any of them put it all together, and that's reasonable. So Jesus clarifies, do you understand what I have done for you? And subtext, why I have done that for you? Well, he's going to reveal the answer. In verse 13 it says, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. He is both teacher, that is the rabbi, and he is also Lord, the leader of their lives. And rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. So it's kind of a got it. Right, we should wash feet, right? Well, except there's two more verses that give us more clarification. They're supposed to learn something, but I don't know if they've learned that lesson yet. Verse 16, I tell you the truth, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. So here's some things about this last part. Do they know? Do they understand what's going on? Do they know? Do they know that servants are not greater than masters? And Jesus knew who sent him. He knew that he was here to serve the will of the Father. Did they see Jesus as they should? Do they see him as their master, and therefore they're the servants and he's the master? Do they understand that he is the Lord, Yahweh, that he is God in the flesh? He is the eternal God in flesh. Do they understand that they are being sent as messengers and that the message is almost complete? Well, not yet, but that's why we have the rest of chapter 13 through 17 to help them get there. They need to figure out these answers. Is Jesus really the Lord? Why are we being sent? Where are we being sent? What's the purpose of our lives? Well, all of that is going to start to come. But it starts in John 13, 1 through 17 here. This section where Jesus says, it's not just what I say, but you do as I do. Follow my example, and you're going to be led in a proper direction. So in this, I picked up 7 life lessons that we can implement. As Jesus knew the time had come for him to leave the world and go to the Father, that's in the beginning verse, we learned the life lesson that life is temporary. Judgment is coming, that we're here for a mission, we're here for a great commission. That's a reminder. Life is temporary, focus on the important. A second life lesson is having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. So we learned that showing love is more powerful than speaking of love. We can tell people that we love them, but showing it makes the difference. A third life lesson is in verses 2 to 3. We are encouraged to filter things through a spiritual perspective. Realize that not everyone is supportive of our faith. Opposition, however, doesn't change the truth that we live to please Jesus. That life lesson, focus on the spiritual. Support your faith, filter everything through a spiritual perspective. A fourth lesson, Look back at verses 4 through 11. We see that actions can speak louder than words. And those actions, serving, washing the feet here, can lead to deep spiritual conversations. Even if people aren't ready to hear the truth in love, even if you're trying to convey something, serving people can start good conversations. People may not be ready to hear when you're ready to share. Serve and share along the way. It usually takes several connections and several interactions before people start to question things. Just do the right thing. A fifth lesson comes from verse 12. Reminds me that teaching is often done through questions instead of information or confrontation. When they were starting to ask questions, now you've got teachable moments. We need to check in with people to see if we're sharing the truth in ways that are understandable. Keep checking in with them. Do you remember what we talked about last week? What did you get out of your reading? We start talking and asking questions. Jesus did it a lot. It's a good way for us to interact with people rather than argue with them or confront them or come across as an authority. We're journeying together with them. Number 6, verses 13 through 15 tell me that Jesus is to be understood as both teacher and Lord as we do what he did and say what he said. Those all go together because he is our teacher, things we learn from him, but he is also our Lord, and so we follow his example. The last point in this is verses 16 and 17 remind us to serve Jesus first and foremost in all situations, and that the blessing we seek are often on the other side of obedience. When we do what is right, when we say what is right, the blessing is on the other side of obedience. And that's an important lesson as well. So this week, maybe one of those or a few of those lessons will connect well with you, and they might motivate you to some good behavior. So what life lessons do you see in the section? I picked out 7. There's several others in there that you could have picked out. But take some time to talk them over with others and ask them what they're learning in this section. We're a little disconnected. We're still fractured. Let's use these things as opportunities for conversation through the week. It'll be a blessing for the both of you. You get something out of it. They get something out of it. You're talking about important things, spiritual matters, Bible study. Let's make a commitment to do that and be a blessing and receive a blessing. Next week's life lesson is from John chapter 13, verses 18 through 38. It's gleaning blessings from betrayal. Jesus said that he knows that Judas is going to betray, but we're going to read of the betrayal sections that are recorded in here and the benefit of Jesus knowing and the benefit that he wants from them as well, even though they're going to betray. So hopefully this has been a benefit to you, gives you a good sense of where we're going and what we're doing with the sermon series. As we connect it into our communion message, when you search the last words of Jesus, one of the main things that comes up are the 7, like on the screen here, the 7 last words from the cross. Last words meaning last phrases or statements. So the first is a statement of forgiveness. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. These 7, I want to integrate one of each of these for the next 7 sermons, for each of our communion messages. You might not be familiar with all of them, so the first one is, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. The second is, verily I say to you today, you shall be with me in paradise. Woman, behold thy son, is the third one. And the fourth one is, my God, why have you forsaken me? The fifth one is, I thirst. The sixth one is, I am thirsty. The seventh one is, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And they all teach us a significant lesson along the way. So as we prepare to meet around the Lord's table, we see the love of Jesus standing between humanity and divinity, making intercession for us. And during that, he says, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Even on the cross, he's asking for forgiveness for us through him. Although we were not at the cross that day, and those people were likely ignorant of the scope of what was happening at the time. The God who had taken on flesh at Bethlehem and lived a sinless life, he was right there in front of their eyes. He was willingly offering himself as a substitutional sacrifice, allowing an eternal connection to the perfect God back and restoring back the relationship of the Garden of Eden. Isn't that amazing? All of this is happening right before their eyes, and they don't know what they do. They don't see what is really happening. They can be ignorant of that truth as they see it unfolding. We look back, and ignorance is going to be harder for us to come by. Ignorance of the truth of Jesus' sacrifice on the cross is harder to come by now. We know the story. We know the truth of the story. We know it in our heart. We know what we have done and what we deserve, and that Jesus loves us anyways. We're thankful for the forgiveness offered at the cross, and we meet each week to celebrate the love of God through the breaking of bread and the sharing of grape juice. These simple items help us to connect our hearts and our minds to the need for the cross and the love of God shown in action. We know that He forgives us for our ignorance and our willing sin as we live a life of repentance, honoring His sacrifice. It is still, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. Even if we do know a bit of what we do. So let's go to God in prayer for the bread and the juice this morning. Please bow with me. Loving God and holy God, we thank You for the life of Jesus and His willingness to exchange His sinless life to pay for our sins. As we break this bread, we thank You for adding us to Your body and for leading us even today by Your example. We are thankful for our connection to one another, and we ask for Your guidance in the year that is ahead so that we would love You more dearly, follow You more closely, and serve You more wholeheartedly. We offer this prayer of thanks in the name of Jesus, our teacher and Lord. Amen. And you can break the bread that you have with you. Let's continue in prayer. Blessed Father, we come to You in thanks for the sacrifice of Jesus and the power of the blood that was spilled on the cross and before. We thank You for guiding Him in all the days of His life and for giving Him the strength to finish the work and endure the cross for the joy set before Him. As we share the grape juice, we think of the power of the blood in our salvation and the calling to share His invitation to come to the table with others. We offer this prayer of thanks and reflection in the holy name of Jesus, our brother and our King. Amen. So again, Happy New Year's. This is the start of a new year, and I'm glad that you've chosen to be together in God's Word and to be part of our congregation today. I'm thankful for God's blessing to us and through us, and I'm thankful for your generosity last year, which established our budget and helped us to meet our ministry goals. Thank you for your financial commitment to our congregation, and we're thankful for those who collect, deposit, record, and plan our spending. We're thankful that we have a financially responsible congregation, and we thank you for participating in the finances of the group. May God continue to bless us so that we can bless one another as we join together in the work of the kingdom locally and internationally. Together we can do more. We thank You for Your offering. Blessed to be a blessing. So many blessings to you as you serve in the kingdom and as you connect and encourage one another this week. So the three actions to finish: serve in the kingdom, connect to God and to others, and encourage one another this week. Thank you for coming together. May you be a blessing.